Hello, class. So, I'm hoping that over the last few days you guys have really been living like fiction writers and seeing ideas for stories everywhere and writing entries where you're thinking on the page and living that story idea. I've been kind of putting off the next lesson because I really wanted to be here to teach it to you, but I have to stay home another day with my sick little guy. So I thought that I would try recording the lesson and seeing if that works out so that you can at least get started going a little further with your stories, because I've been peeking in some of your journals while I've been in here tonight and I'm really kind of blown away with what I'm seeing. So I want to give you the opportunity to go further. So I thought I would try recording this lesson and we'll see how that works. Okay, so here's what I want you to notice, and it's really important. Although the mini lessons that I've taught you so far have been about strategies that fiction writers use to come up with ideas for stories, you guys are so kind of alert as learners on your own that you've kind of learned a lot about the ingredients that go into a good story idea. When I looked over your notebooks, I could see that when we started this unit, you thought a good story idea might be one like this. A girl climbs a mountain by herself and she's proud. Not a bad idea. But I can tell by now that many of you realize that a story idea needs to include some more specifics about the character, and so the story might go more like this. A 9-year-old girl has a knee injury and will never be able to bend her knee. At first she gives up on life, but then something happens to change this and she decides not to give up anymore. To prove herself, she sets out to climb the mountain that overlooks her house. She doesn't get to the top, but she proves herself in a different way and learns something. I'm not sure of the specifics. Did you hear how much more interesting that second idea started? Here's what you're going to do today. Today, each of you are going to reread all of your entries and you're going to select one seed idea to develop into a publishable story. In this unit, we're going to call it your story idea. So I'm going to teach you that fiction writers don't just go from choosing a story idea to writing a draft. Instead, a fiction writer lives with a story idea for a while. Specifically, I want to kind of teach you some thinking on the page strategies that fiction writers use to live with their characters and to rehearse for their drafts. So you're going to see that these strategies focus less on planning what will happen in your stories and more on bringing to life the people that are going to make these things happen. There was a fiction writer who once said, "Before you can begin writing your story, you need to know your characters so well that you know exactly how much change each one has in her pocket." Okay, so I told you earlier that we're going to need to reread our story ideas and select one to develop into a story. But honestly, I think usually a story idea kind of chooses us. Usually I find that in the end there's one idea that kind of stays with us and haunts us enough that it feels like we have to write about this one. So when I was on my way to school, I realized that I had already decided to write about that girl who's afraid of the dark that I was talking about the other day and wants to buy a nightlight. So I looked through my journal and I put sticky notes on the pages related to that, and now I'm going to begin developing that seed idea into the story. Okay? So notice, I'm not going to start by thinking about what's going to happen in the story. I'm going to pull myself back from doing that, and I'm going to try to focus on getting to know my character. So I talked to you the other day about wanting to write about characters that I wish I could find in books, and I was talking about a friend of mine who was half African American and half white and wanted more books with characters like that, and I kind of wanted to do that, but I was actually thinking that I want to write a character about a character who's half Mexican and half white. I have a friend that fits that category who's friends with my son Elliot, and I was thinking about her and wanting to kind of put her in the story a little bit. So I want to give her a name. Well, first of all, I started a chart back here, and it says developing my character, and it says outside or external features and inside or internal features. This is just a couple of ways I can think about my character to help develop it. So I'm going to write on the outside part something that's outside of her, that she's part Mexican. And I kind of want to give her a name so I can start talking about her. So I want to give her a name that goes with the fact that she's Mexican. And I'm trying to think about if there's anything else about my character that could help me find a good name. I definitely know she's going to be afraid of the dark, which I can put over here on the internal side. I have an idea. I was just watching Handy Manny with my son Elliot, and I know that the word in Spanish for light is luz, and I think that would make a good character name too, so that's what I'm going to make her name. So that's an external feature, that's her name. Alright, so... Okay, so did you see that I didn't just come up with any old random characteristics for my character? I tried to put together a person in a way that the parts of who she is fit together. I want them to come together, to cohere, to be a person who comes to life. So what else? Well, I want Luz to be kind of like me. I want to put myself in the story. So if this chart were about me and not Luz, I think in the internal column I'd write that I'm sensitive. I was telling you guys about that the other day too. So I think I want Luz to be sensitive too, and sort of like artistic. So I'm going to add that to this side. I know you guys are laughing because I can't draw very well, but I don't mean that she draws well necessarily when I say artistic, just that she's really interested in the arts. Okay, so let's see. Does being sensitive and being artistic fit with everything I know about Luz? Do they fit together? Well, when her father's gone, she's afraid of the dark. She's sensitive. Being sensitive often goes hand in hand with being like imaginative and creative. So I could imagine her like coming up with all kinds of creative, frightening thoughts about the dark, and I can picture her creating interesting artwork. So yeah, I think they could go together. Did you see that when I'm developing my character, I begin with whatever I know, how I knew I wanted my character to be a bit like me. You might know that you want your character to be a bit like you, or maybe you want your character to resemble somebody else in your life that you know. Maybe you know you want your character to go from being tough to being gentle. Start with whatever you know that you want for your character. I actually started making us another chart about advice for developing a character, and that's the first point on it. Start with deciding what matters most to you about your character. Is he or she like you? Are they like somebody you know? You decide what's important to you. Okay? I hope you also notice that I often pause to reread the things that I've already put on my chart, because I kind of want to keep asking myself, do these different things make sense with one person? Do they fit together in a believable way? Are these traits, these things about my character, are they there for a reason? I kind of reread to test whether the characters that I'm creating kind of stand up to being believable. Okay? So that's my second point on my advice for developing a character. Put together a character so that all the parts fit together into a coherent person. And reread often, asking yourself, do these different things make sense in one person? Do they fit together in a believable way? Are these traits here for a reason? Okay, I'm going to leave this chart up for you guys to use today. I'm going to do one last thing that I want you to notice. I'm going to look at this word that I wrote up here, sensitive. Okay? And I want to say exactly what it means. Lots of people can be sensitive, but what does it exactly mean for Luz? What does it mean when I say sensitive? Let's see. I think for Luz that it means that she's really very kind. But I'm still keeping in mind that question, does she seem believable? And I'm worried that I may be making Luz just a little bit too good to be true. If she's human, she can't be all caring, all kind. She needs to be a little bit more complicated, or she won't seem like a real person. That's an important piece of advice too. And so you might have noticed I just kind of tried to open up this word sensitive and ask, what exactly does it mean? It's kind of like saying, if you say someone's nice, well, what does that mean? That's kind of a general word. We want to be more specific about it. But while we're doing that, we want to keep in mind, if a character seems too good to be true, we need to make him or her more complex and more human. Like, we can ask ourselves, well, what's the downside to that character trait? I want to think more about Luz being sensitive and about her caring about people, but I want to think about, why does she care for people, and how can there be a downside or a negative part of this? So I'm thinking Luz might be really thin-skinned. What I mean by that is, like, everything gets to her easily. Like the dark gets to her, and her father being away gets to her, and people's judgments get to her too. So like her feelings get hurt really easily. And that's why she's careful of other people. She figures that other people might be thin-skinned just like she is. So I think those can go together to talk about kind of how sometimes being sensitive makes her not trust people. So now it's your turn to try. I want you to think about this character, my character Luz. I want you to help me. For now, I want you and your partner to try to add some things to the other side of the chart, the outside, the external features. Okay? By the way, I often do this inside piece first before I start thinking about the external part. Okay. As you talk through the things you might add to this side, her hobbies, her looks, her ways of acting in the world, her friends or family, her experiences at school, remember that you're going to talk about external features that fit with the internal ones. So begin by reading what we've already written. She's afraid of the dark. She's sensitive. She's artistic. Okay? And turn and tell your partner how the things we've already written affect your ideas about the external side of Luz. Start talking to your partner. What are some things that could go over here? Go ahead and pause the video and do that for about 3 minutes. Go. Okay, can I have your ears and your eyes? Okay, I want you to pause and reread this chart, this advice for developing a character. Okay? And I want you to use that advice to think about what you're seeing about Luz's external features. I want them to fit with the advice that we have in our chart here. Okay, I want you to pause this video again and take 2 or 3 minutes to think some more. Go. Okay, what I'm going to have you do now is pause the video, and I'd like you to share out some of your ideas and go ahead and have our sub add them to this chart. So what are some things that you guys came up for the external features? So go ahead and pause and see if we can get a list added here. Okay. You've got some big work to do during your writing time today. Okay? You're going to begin by thinking whether one of your seed ideas or your story ideas has chosen you. Is there one that you know is the one you want to write about? If nothing seems like the one that you have to write about, if nothing feels like that important to you, you might spend a little bit more time collecting some more story ideas. I want it to be one that really pulls at you, that really wants you to write it. Either way, by the end of today, by the end of your independent writing time today, I want you to end feeling committed to one story idea. And once you have that story idea, you can begin by getting to know your character. Okay? I want you to think about what your character is like on the inside and on the outside. You might want to make a 2-column chart like this one, outside and inside. Okay? When you go to your writing spot, you can put a chart like this right into your notebook and start adding to it. Okay? Or maybe you want to just draw a line down the column and start writing. Maybe you want to do paragraphs talking about their outside and then their inside, or their inside and then their outside. Whatever works for you. You're in charge, of course. Okay. But from this day on, I hope that whenever you write fiction, you remember that instead of launching right into a draft or focusing only on planning the plot of your story, you always hold yourself back and take the time to develop your character. So I've started another chart for our unit to help us remember this. It says how to write a fiction story. And our first point is develop a strong story idea, characters, and setting. As you're writing today, I want you to be thinking about your character, choosing your seed idea first, and then thinking about your character and starting to develop these traits. Okay. Happy writing. See you tomorrow.